Hey, Josh.
Hey, Dean. Thanks for inviting me.
You are very welcome. It's nice to see you again. Okay, now
Likewise.
tell folks a little bit about you, and then I want to just drop you right into a hypothetical situation.
Sure. Well, nice to meet everybody. Thank you for joining today. Let's see. My career is really broken down into three phases, or happened in three phases. First, I started out as a digital marketer with a specific focus
Mhm.
on digital and e-commerce. I grew in that and then transitioned into CMO roles. So I had three, either chief marketing or chief marketing and chief digital officer roles. That was phase two. And then phase three is my current phase of life, which is fractional CMO and consultant and advisor to a variety of companies.
All right. Well,
And
in
then,
that vein, let's talk about this. Okay, you got a new customer. Today's day one. They're actually only about 5 minutes from your house, so you're actually going to walk into their building 9 o'clock Monday. Okay, not virtual. When you walk into a brand new engagement like that with a brand new customer, what's the dream scenario you're walking into? And what is the utter nightmare scenario you'd be walking into?
yeah, when I think about the dreams, great question. Two things really jump out to me in my mind, which is one, people, and two, data. So
Mm-hmm.
speaking about people first, I mean, dream scenario is the team is excited that you're coming in. That's the marketing team that would be reporting up to me. That would be the peers I'd be working with. They know why I'm there. They've been prepped about the mission, and they're happy to see me, and they think I can contribute. That's and they're ready to wrap arms and work together. And then in terms of the data, there's information available to whether that's including historic reports, ongoing reports that show you what's happening in the business, both at a from a high level perspective, and then in the marketing world, what are the KPIs, what's being tracked, what are we hitting, what are we not hitting, and that stuff's all readily available and is there in a way that you can use it to assess the situation relatively quickly to figure out, all right, where are we doing well in reality, not just what was
Right.
told to you, and then where do we have misses in reality, not just what was told to you. So those
Mm-hmm.
are the two big components of a dream. And I think the flip side, honestly, I just would stick with those two themes and say that the nightmare would be the exact opposite. So the people have not been properly prepped about why you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
there. Maybe they're not enthusiastic that you're there for whatever reason. Maybe they don't think you need to be there. So probably that falls upon the CEO or the board having explained the rationale for bringing in a fractional CMO and getting the team excited about that happening. If that hasn't happened, it's going to be really tough to get in there and build bridges. And then the data obviously speaks for itself. If you get in there,
Right.
there's no reporting, or the data is inaccurate, or it's just non-existent, or people aren't sharing that information with you. It's very hard to get up to speed and figure out where you can make an impact and where the company needs you to make an impact.
All right, then let's. That was day one. Let's jump way into the future, as far in the future as this podcast ever goes, which is day 90. Not very
Day
far.
90. So
90.
the
That's it.
same. You're talking about dream
Same
situation.
engagement. No, no, no. Same engagement, same project, everything, but it's not day one anymore. You've been there for 3 months, right?
Got it.
What typically would be the client's sort of aha moment of having you there? It's like obviously there was a value prop that ended
Mhm.
up with you signing a contract and coming on anyway. But what do they like? Oh, now I get it. Now
Yeah.
I see the real benefit. What is that aha moment for them?
Yeah. Oh, I think that most companies, when they bring in a fractional CMO, they have a problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And whether that's, and I've seen that problem be pretty wide ranging from the team was very unhappy under a previous leader, and a lot of them were looking to leave. And the executives want to settle down the team to prevent turnover. So that's on the people front. Or it could be more specific, hey, we're not growing as fast as we want, or we're not bringing in customers to the level that we need to bring them in. And so to me, whether it's 90 days or 45 days or 70 days, it's when you can show tangible proof that you're making progress against that specific problem that they brought you in for, or the handful of problems.
Right.
And hopefully it's before 90 days, but definitely at 90 days, I'll be able to say, this is what you brought me in for. This is what we did. This is what we tried. This is what we've achieved. And then have some, not only your own validation point, but perfect is some other team members or even better peers have gone to the CEO and said, hey, this person, the fractional CMO, has helped us achieve X, Y, and Z that relates to that initial problem.
All right. Okay, so let's switch to a different hypothetical scenario then. You're on stage. You're the keynote speaker. There's 250 people in the audience. Every one of them just came out of corporate and became a fractional CMO yesterday. Right? They're brand new, freshly baked, or
Mhm.
right into the fire kind of thing. All right. And so let's talk about the like three things to say to that group during your speech. So we'll kick off with the first one. I'll start it, and then you can just finish it with however
Okay.
much time you need to
Sure.
finish it. You're looking at them and you're saying, starting out, fractional CMOs. Uh, the one thing you're going to be shocked by is
Shocked by. I think for me, and I can only speak from my personal experience,
yeah,
and be very, very, very honest with you. Like it can be lonely sometimes,
yeah,
and I think that's something that I wasn't expecting. When you're accustomed to being a part of a team day in day out, you build, and over a long period of time, you build deep relationships with certain people, different types of relationships.
mm-hmm.
People are, maybe slacking you or texting you on the side, like just chit chatting even, and and you build relationships. Let's reuse that word. And when you're a fractional CMO, it's not to say you don't, but it's not the same. You're not there day in day out, 40 hours,
Mm-hmm.
50 hours a week. You haven't been there for 4 years.
Right.
So the relationships are different. So I think that it can be a little lonely. And I'll add to that. Sometimes there are meetings that happen. I've seen this in almost all my clients where I would have definitively been involved if I'd been
Mm-hmm.
the full-time CMO. When I was a full-time CMO, I was in those type of meetings. But because you're a fractional, you might
Right.
be thinking, well, we're only going to invite these people, are not going to invite the fractional because they're not really a full-time employee, or maybe something's a little too sensitive. This doesn't involve
Mm-hmm.
marketing, so we're not going to bring them in and burn hours. And maybe it's really just an innocent sense of we don't want to burn hours, so let's be cautious. So you're not brought into as many of those high-level meetings. So that's both an element of loneliness, an element of like a little bit of being excluded, which is both an emotional thing and also a practical thing, because you don't get all the information necessarily in that meeting. So I'd say be prepared to not be involved in the exact same way that you're accustomed to.
All right. So finish this thought. You're still talking to the same people, and you say, and you're going to
And
find that most clients just don't understand.
again, from a personal experience, how hard it is to code switch between clients.
Mm.
It's kind of a funny little practical thing, but what comes to my mind is like sometimes I'll be with a client and they'll say like, Dean. And I'll think, Dean, is that the guy at the PR agency or is that the
Mm-hmm.
guy in IT? Oh, wait, Dean's the IT guy at the other company. Dean here is the head of operations or whatever, this VP of operations, or acronyms that are used. It's like being a new employee where it takes, a little bit of time to get used to the
Yeah.
acronyms. That's tends to be a little bit longer as a fractional because you're not there day in, day out. So sometimes I think that's an example where just the employees and the client doesn't remember that you're switching between a couple of different jobs, and they might serve them and you to explain things a little better versus just assume that you know exactly what's going on.
Fair enough. Okay, so you're at the end of your speech. Some intern is trying to like signal you to get off the stage. It's like the Oscars, and the music's coming up, and they want you to like move off. But by God, you got one more thing to say to these people. And you say, "Look, before I leave the stage, I want to tell you the number one thing to remember about getting new clients is."
Start 2 years ago,
There you go. That's the most
meaning.
honest answer anyone has ever given in for that question.
Oh, thank you. Can I expand on it for a moment?
Not going to be a popular answer, but go ahead.
No, it's not. It's not a popular answer. But here's my experience and the experience of a lot of people that I know who do
Mm-hmm.
fractional and consulting work. And it's a cliche, but you have to really take this to heart. Most of your clients will come from your own network.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll get pitched by people every day on LinkedIn saying, oh, well, how'd you like 10 new leads? I can do outreach for you. Um, I've yet to meet people in this realm who say that's their main way of getting clients. Almost everybody, if not everybody I've talked to, says it's through my own network. So if you have started building a strong network a few years ago, you're well suited to go out and
Right.
get clients. If you have not built that network, it's going to be very, very difficult from everything I've seen and heard.
No, that's a really good answer. Okay, so your speech is over. You're finally off the stage. You leave that area and you walk out onto the convention floor with all the booths and people milling around and stuff. And you're about to talk to, a bunch of prospects with these little tiny conversations you're having here and there, right? And so, as you're talking to prospective clients and they talk to you about marketing and their marketing needs, what do they tend to overrate and what do they tend to underrate when they're talking to you?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question too, and I think that it it goes beyond just potential clients, just marketing in general. I think that there is a tendency now, um, both in marketing, but coming out of the CFOs and the CEOs, to overrate the specificity
Yeah.
of results. We do X, I want the ROI here. And that's
Mm-hmm.
whether it's short-term customer acquisition. I spent this, I want to know exactly what I got back from it. And rewinding a bit, in my career, as I mentioned in the beginning, my intro, the first part of my career, I was in digital marketing. And I started at a time when digital was very small and was pretty much an afterthought or not a thought. And so it was my job to try to pull some budget out of TV and radio and bring it over to digital. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to say, like, hey, unlike TV and radio billboards, I can tell
Right.
you, I run this ad, and this is what we spend, and this is what you get. And that was one of the most convincing ways to get
Mm-hmm.
budget. And it served a purpose. And it wasn't wrong, but it was oversold. And I was part of that. And the whole industry was part of that, overselling the specificity of you do X, you can get Y. And now I think in 2025, when we're recording this, there has been an over reliance or too much faith put in the specificity of doing X and getting Y. And I've heard people say, if you can't measure it, why do it? Okay, maybe you can take that to an extreme and say, okay, yeah, you can always do a lift study or do this. There are ways to more or less measure everything, but the meaning behind that, the intent behind that is usually, I want to know if I spend this dollar, what am I getting back exactly? And you're not really going to get there. And if you do, you're thinking too much about short-term tactics anyways, and you're
Right.
not thinking creatively and doing things that are going to help your brand over the long term. And so I raise my hand and say I was part of creating
Right.
that beast, but
And
that
now
beast
people
really has
overrate it.
taken on a large
No.
life in the world of corporate America.
And what do they underrate? What do you think they should spend more attention on or have forgotten to spend attention on? And it's really like to their detriment.
Yeah, I think I'll go with the flip side of that, which is that there's certain things you're going to do that are going to have a long-term important impact on your enterprise value that you're not going to be able to measure today. So in the world of marketing, the world that I live in, it's you can do some partnerships or be involved. Let me give you an example. When I was at SkyZone, I was the CMO of SkyZone for almost 7 years. We built the brand from being a regional, small brand to a very large global brand in 12, 14 countries, over 300 units, pretty big business. We sold private equity. It's only gotten bigger. During that time, there was a lot of very specific things we did in the local markets to get customers today and this week. And that was very important. And that helped build the business and to help the franchisees, most of them are franchise owned, make money and be happy. But at the same time, we did things that could never be measured. For example, we were integrated into a Bachelorette episode where the group date was at a Sky Zone. We were integrated into a movie called Bad
Right.
Moms Christmas. We did partnerships with Snapchat. We pushed the content out to ESPN that got onto SportsCenter a few times. Most of that stuff you can never measure, much as you want to. But it created tremendous enterprise value. And also some of the franchisees said, hey, that's all sexy and cool, but you keep talking about that. But like, is that getting a customer in my location this Saturday? No one's ever come in and said, hey, I saw you on Bad Moms Christmas. That's why I came in. I said, well, no one's ever going to say that. That's not,
Right.
you walk into a venue and say, I'm here because I saw XYZ TV commercial. But in any event, there's a lot of focus on, again, the specificity, what added a lot, and it was important, but what added a lot of value in terms of when we sold to private equity, when those franchisees 5 years later went to sell their businesses because they wanted to move on, that brand building was of tremendous value to the company. And so I think that was undervalued. I saw it at the time,
Right.
but it proved to be really important. And today, many years later, when I talk to people, they say Sky Zone, a lot of them remember, they remember the Bad Moms Christmas scene. They remember my boss being in an Undercover Boss, which was probably going back 12 years, 14 years ago now, or something like that.
Right.
That's the stuff that they remember.
Yeah. All right. So you're talking to prospective clients, right? We're always kind of looking for the next client, ideally the next great client, right? As you're talking to them, like what's a red flag and what's a green flag for talking to these folks?
Yeah, I mean, two red flags I think of, actually, not one.
Mm-hmm.
One red flag is just too much drawn out conversation. I've had situations where someone contacts me on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and then they have a call, and then they invite me to a coffee or a virtual coffee, and they said they're going to come back, and then they do, and then it's just like no, 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 no. Those things for me have never actually resulted in a gig. They just resulted in a lot of
Time.
conversations,
Yeah.
and I now see the pattern. So now I'm wary of like conversation number 3 going on conversation number 4. It's like, okay, you're not really committed. That's one red flag. And then the second red flag is when they don't really know what they want from you, and they don't really understand what marketing does. Okay, there are 3 red flags. What marketing actually is and what it delivers, what I mean by what marketing does. So,
Right. So what's a
yeah.
green flag?
Well, one green flag are the little green dollar bills that can actually pay the fee that you
That's
are
nice, right?
asking,
Yeah.
and that they pay what you're worth. And if you have a market value in mind, you know what your market value is, and if they can't pay it, I mean or don't want to pay it, then that's a
Right.
huge red flag. So a lot of green little flags, and then let's see what else is a red flag. Sorry, are we on green flag or red flag? I confused myself as I
We're on the
mentioned the
green
$10
flag.
bills. And I'm like, I got it all twisted in my head. What are we talking about?
The number one green flag, like you said,
Yeah.
they have money
Oh,
and
yeah.
want to spend it
Dollar
on
bills.
you.
That's it. That's it. Sorry. I had too many
For
res and
any
greens.
client
Number
out there
one.
who's ever wondering, every marketer likes money. Just like
Yeah.
every one of them, you don't have to overthink it. They
Right.
all like money.
We like to spend it to grow the business, but we
Yeah.
like to, and so does everybody. I mean, listen, and it's a serious thing because if you have a market rate and everyone can, there's
Yeah.
negotiations, may say, I want this, but I'm willing to go to this. But if they're coming down here, that's obviously a red flag. And then, yeah, that's what I'll go with.
All right. And then if you, in most episodes, we have 2 guests, but we had a last minute reschedule. So it's just you and me today. So it's nicer. I like the 1-to-1s. But if someone else was here, like another fractional CMO that you'd never met before, but you could ask them a question, what one question would you ask them? What are you curious about that other people are going through?
You ask such great questions. I mean, I love
Well,
them
I
when
have
you
the
ask.
benefit. This is episode 186. I have the
Oh, there you
benefit
go.
of iterating through questions to find a really great set. And that was the goal all
Yeah,
along, is to find the set of questions.
yeah.
I'll tell you
I
what,
mean,
never mind. Uh, do you have, you can either ask no question or you can ask me a question, like me a question.
yeah.
It's up
Um,
to you.
yeah, I'll ask you a question. That's more interesting
Sure.
because the
You go
other
for it.
one's too hypothetical.
Very rarely do I get to answer questions. You go right ahead.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I'll ask you the same question: Is what's the main way that you are finding clients?
I ended up in a conversation with someone on LinkedIn. I've looked for this conversation thread several times now because it happened about 2 years ago. I think I was just starting year 3. Somehow I ended up in the conversation with someone who really understood tiny businesses and how they find clients and their revenue. And they predicted by he said, "What year are you in?" And I told him, like, I'm in year 3 now. And he said, uh, around year 4, or by the end of year 4, you will find that you'll have reached an inflection point with your revenue, with your clients, and more of your clients will come from referral and your network than from your prospecting. And I didn't know if that was true or not, but I kept an eye on it. December was the 4th anniversary for my company, and and sure enough, they were right on the money. It was 60/40. But I mean, I help companies do outbound, right? I figure out what kind of angle we're going to go at with their prospects so that we can get that person's attention, sort of draw them into the client's world. And so obviously I had a big stake in outbound, and I have like outbound, like stacks, tech stacks, and everything's going on. And yet, even despite all of that, sort of mostly automated, and I think pretty dialed in outbound, because I mean, obviously I don't have to hire the copywriter to write the outbound. I am the copywriter for outbound. Then, but yeah, even despite all that, it's still 60/40. Like, you get known once you're around long enough and you're known enough and enough people know you exist and what you do. This is the hardest part, is just making sure, A, deciding what you do, B, finding how to like say that in a way so that other people will remember it when you're not in the room. Those 2 things are really the toughest part, because once you've got that nailed down, you're great. I was in a workshop a couple weeks ago, and I was being introduced by the fractional CMO, and so, like, this is Dean. He's one of the specialists that I use for some projects, and they said like my branding position, right? And it was like, wow, finally, I've hit the point where like people remember, right? And she said like Dean's a copywriter. He doesn't write the content and the article stuff. Dean specializes in the first words we're ever going to say to that prospect. That's it, which is all I do. All I do is figure out and write the first words that a company says to tomorrow's customer.
Hmm.
That's my only job. I only do the first few moments of that potential customer's attention, and then I sort of pull them in, and everything that everyone else wrote, it's there. But yeah, so these days it's mostly referrals, like a little more than
Mhm.
half. But the whole point of uh, is to sort of understand that at some point you will, if you remain like a small company, you will eventually inflect, and most
Mhm.
of your customers will come from referrals, not necessarily your own network, but from referrals. And but you do have to learn how to do your outbound and learn how to find new customers and prospect. You can't
Yeah.
count on referral. You just have to accept that they are going to happen at some point if your message is consistent enough and you're in a category that people need and
Yeah.
remember.
I have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Um, how long did it take you, or what was your process um, for arriving at that level of specificity in what you do? Because in the beginning, if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I need a copywriter to write 5 blog posts," from what you
Mhm.
said, you're going to say,
No,
"Congratulations, good for you. Let me
yeah,
refer you to my
I'm
friend
not for
Bill."
you. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
not for you.
I know some people. I'm going to refer them to you,
Right.
but
So in the
right from the
beginning, though,
beginning,
like
I've
day
never
one,
written. Yeah, I have never written content.
no. So day one, when you started out in your business, did
Yeah.
you start with this? You had this focus from the
Yes.
very beginning.
Now, from time to time, an existing customer will need like a signature piece written or something, or they're going to go to a conference or something, and they need like a blog post that they're, it's the foundation and the details. And I would, from time to time, help people write that one offs here and there, but only for existing customers. I never like got into an account by agreeing to do that kind of work. But I mean, it's just a nature of my business that maybe 95, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 99% of all copywriters write content marketing. Uh, and it's also 100% of all new copywriters write content marketing. They all
Mhm.
start there because it's the easy place to start, right?
Yeah.
Knowing how to, take 500 words and turn it into 4 words that hook somebody. That's not something you just like pop into the profession with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I knew from the jump, there's literally no point competing with 99% of the market. So I started carving out from the beginning and saying and figuring the stuff that I would and I mainly wouldn't do until I got to the point where, iteratively, I realized I have like a particular strength in this one thing. And so I need to find a way to like develop a client base with just this one thing. And that's ultimately, by the way, what led me to working with fractional CMOs and CROs now, but focusing on it because they're constantly looking for new clients. They're constantly starting new projects. And I'm one of those people that fits into their Rolodex and I get called in to do like one piece. Right. But if you know enough fractional CMOs, and I like personally know hundreds and hundreds of fractional CMOs now, right? If you know enough of them, then in any given month, some percentage of them are starting new projects
Mhm.
and I get a call.
I
That's how it
love that
works. That's my whole business
dedication.
model.
Yeah. It's impressive that you had that business model from the get-go because
Yeah.
it would the natural guess would be that you started doing a wider array of things and then you narrow
Yes.
down to either what you really enjoy or what people find the most value, what you're best at. But
Yeah.
it sounds like you started with that knowledge
Yeah.
uh,
About
ahead of
eight. I
time.
mean, I about 18 months in of the 4 years, I had at that point met 3 fractional CMOs and worked with one, and I didn't even know what a fractional CMO was.
Mhm.
Right, with the first one, because it's more or less blossomed in the last couple 3 years. And then I realized I was just sitting down saying, okay, I need a way to like, how am I going to get in front of enough people so that I wrote this little like 3 sentence slide that defined all of marketing that I was going to follow. And the first sentence is that some number of strangers need to know that you exist and what you sell. Like it's the number one rule of marketing, right? No matter what else you're thinking about, some number of strangers, probably way more strangers than you think, need to be told that you exist and what you sell. And I said, how am I going to do that, like as a one person? And then I thought about the fractional CMOs, and I realized we're going after the exact same companies, right? The specialty paint manufacturers and the fintech startups and the SaaS companies and the healthcare tech manufacturers and whatever, right? All the B2B stuff mostly. They're going after the same customers that I'm going after, and we don't compete. So why am I trying to like establish, presence and relationships with 10,000 different companies and nurture them so that at some point they're going to be at the point where they're ready to buy from someone like me. Instead, I just need to find 3 or 4, maybe 500 fractional CMOs, market to them. And because I don't have to do all of this, you know what it's like when you're a one-person business, right? The single biggest cost in your business is the time it takes you to find and get in front of enough strangers so that you have a sustainable revenue model.
Mm-hmm.
I said, why would I do that? Why don't I just take that cost that I was having to put in time and money, and I'll just go to the fractional CMOs and I say, hey, you're maintaining like a stable of people anyway, because any particular customer, maybe they already have an agency, but they don't have an SEO person, or they have an SEO person, so they're not going to use yours, but they need a graphics lady. So bring in your graphics lady, right? Like the whole point is your Rolodex, not that you bring everyone with you, but in any given engagement, the company's the client's not going to have existing relationships or be pleased with, one or more vendors they're already dealing with, and they're going to look to you and say, hey, do you have people that you know and trust, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I'll just like
Yeah.
go to these fractional CMOs and I say, hey, this big chunk of cost that I had in my business, I'm going to like turn that over, and I'm going to lower my price so that you can buy from me, resell me to your client, and you can make that margin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly how my business works.
I love it.
I'm
Smart model.
essentially a wholesaler of my own services to hundreds of resellers who add a markup or don't,
Yeah.
but it's their choice. And
Right.
then, sell me to their clients. And the client,
You
and only when the client is exactly at the point where they're ready to buy from me.
right. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Good model. I like it. And
It's just
that's
kind of
me.
an upside down way of thinking about it. And I
Yeah.
just decided I could invert this and I can make this work for me.
Yeah. It sounds like there's something you thought of yourself. It wasn't like somebody
Yeah.
said to you, you read a
Yeah.
pamphlet.
Nobody, in fact, I didn't know anybody who had ever worked with a fractional CMO besides me when I
Mm-hmm.
decided to focus on them. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, congrats on that success.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. So who should be reaching out to you these days, and how should they get to you? What's the best way to get to you?
Yeah. Well, my website is on the screen, jcoleconsulting.co. Excuse me. That's probably the best way because there's a contact form on there and you
Yeah.
can see a little bit more about my background and what I do. Most of the businesses that I work with are consumer facing multi-unit businesses.
Okay.
And those could be either company owned or a franchise network, or many times it's a blend between the two. I fell into that world once I became the CMO of SkyZone, and I find that most of my clients are multi-unit businesses.
Right.
I also have the digital background, so the secondary focus is on companies that are looking for help with the conversion rate optimization, or just wondering like why the digital metrics aren't as strong as they're hoping for. So I have some businesses that just focus on that as well, whether they're retailers or pure digital plays.
All right.
And thirdly, coaching. I mean, the three other things, like the thing I love the most is helping new leaders or sort of mid-career leaders who are overseeing a team and could use some pointers and tips on how to manage a team. I've had a lot of success in that, and over my career, I've had very, very loyal teams. I'm very proud of this. Very little turnover on my teams, very high performing
Right.
teams that both did a lot and had fun. And I want to pass that along to other team leaders. And so I love working with folks who could use a helping hand on how to go from being a team leader or a good team leader to being a great team leader.
All right. Josh, man, this has been great. Thank you so much for being here. It's
Thank you.
nice
I
to see
really
you again.
appreciate what you shared about your business. That was very interesting to hear, and sounds like a great model and a creative one. So
Yeah.
congratulations to you, and thank you for
Thanks.
inviting me on.
All right. All right. See you next time. See you, everyone.
Thank you.